I'm Will Aubrey. It's time for another edition of the Improbability Engine. My buddy Joe Darnold joins me now, and as always, we start with our moment of what?
Yeah, Will, mine comes from the world of college football. Of course, as you know, it's that time of year. College football's kicking off, and there's a lot of great games, and you know, my boss he's a huge college football fan. He graduated from Texas A&M University. Texas A&M played UCLA the first game of the season, and it was, you didn't know what you were going to get. You know, it's an SEC team versus a Pac-10 or Pac-12 team, and you go, yeah, let's see what's going on. And at first, the game looked like it was going to be a blowout. A&M ran out to a 37-10 lead at halftime, which is astronomical. I wasn't watching the game. I'm just following on Twitter. I'm like, 30, it's over. All right, I'm not going to follow that anymore. I'm going to do something else. Boy, did I mess up.
I think it was 44-10 in the third quarter.
I think you're right. 44-10 in the third quarter, and UCLA comes back, scored 35 unanswered, and wins the game 45-44 in what has to be one of the biggest comebacks in college football history. I went to bed because, it's on the West Coast. I'm not staying up for that. It's West Coast time. I'm not doing that. So I lay down and go to bed. I get up the next morning, and I'm, getting up in the morning. I'm checking the news, and I get down to the sports, and I'm looking through sports, and I go, A&M was up big. They should have won that game. I wonder what the final score was. I wonder if they broke 70. And they lost. And, of course, oh, God, now I can't talk to my boss about football for a week. This is horrible. But I still, for the life of me, giving up 35 unanswered points to lose the game.
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
And my moment of what is actually going to be related to the same game.
Okay.
A member of the Texas A&M Board of Regents got on Facebook after that game and basically suggested that they fired the football coach.
Well, and that's not new. I mean,
for a member of the Board of Regents,
to
get on Facebook and do that.
You expect that stuff out of an alumni association. You don't expect it out of the Board of Regents. No, that's a close runner-up to my moment of what was the University of Tennessee garbage can.
Oh, good grief. What the heck was that?
I have no idea for the life of me.
And they screwed it up about half the time.
Well, and what's more,
for people who didn't see it, they have some guy hold a garbage can up, and after a big play, a player comes over and tries to dunk the football in it, but they weren't always successful.
Well, the worst part is, you've got what's clearly a garbage can that you have now put your team logo on. So if there was ever something you did not want your team associated with,
it would be trash.
It would be garbage. Why would you want your logo on a garbage can? Because you know what? Yeah, they won the game against Georgia Tech, but you're just one or two bad games away from the world full of dumpster fire jokes.
Absolutely.
And you know what? I've got no sympathy for you, Tennessee. None whatsoever.
And in that game, I was stunned in the second overtime. Georgia Tech goes for two to try to win it before the third overtime. Tennessee hadn't stopped them all night long. I would have kicked the extra point and let's go to the next overtime and see what happens.
You know what's funny about that is oftentimes what we talk about in the overtime is what do you think of your team? And the coaches who go for two when they don't have to, they either seem to think that their team is outmanned and things are going against them. Momentum has shifted. They've figured some things out. The other team's made some adjustments, and we can't adjust again. Or my team's good enough that we can bowl right over them. I wonder if Georgia Tech didn't have we're outmanned. Tennessee's made some adjustments. They finally got some stops against us. Maybe we should think about maybe we should think about doing something else. I don't know. I can't figure it out for the life of me. I don't know.
Well, I don't either. I was flabbergasted by it. So I took a look at a Georgia Tech Facebook page for Georgia Tech fans.
Right.
They were all in favor of it.
You know what? In all honesty, if you had to look at a team in this country and you look at some teams that you say, okay, you've got a one play from the 2.5, 3 yard line to get in the end zone. Teams like Alabama would come to mind, but if you were to go and drop down a tier, you would say, well, Navy and Georgia Tech. Because if you watch those teams go, you watch them and you just kind of go, yeah, they get three yards just about every
I will
play.
say this, though. Sometimes when you try to get too clever, you pay a price.
Absolutely correct. And I think that's the case. You want your team to do well, and you believe in your team, but sometimes you just got to kind of keep it simple, stupid. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that brings us to high school football. Callaway County's Lakers are coming off of a 26-7 loss at Metcalfe County. That was a game in which the Lakers were without arguably their three best players. Jacob Bella was out, and then in addition to that, they were without Darius Stribling and Jordan Norsworthy. Not having those three guys hurt, I've got to tell you, they did much better against Metcalfe County than I was afraid they were going to do. And you may look at the 26-7 score and say, well, how can that be? But if you take Callaway's, if you take those three players out of the game against Murray, it's a lot worse.
Right, it's a running clock. Probably.
Yes.
Well,
and Metcalfe County, they were not able to do that to the Lakers. I was proud of the way the Lakers hung in there. And, you know, this week it gets tougher, though, because even though they're at home, they play Marshall County.
And, you know, I think you're absolutely right. I followed along with the game, and I was really impressed with the way that the Lakers fought through adversity. Because that was a close game through a half. I mean, a really close game. I thought the Lakers had a chance to win. If they can push it in and get a score, I think maybe something changes. They weren't able to. They fought hard, but the thing about Norsworthy is he just flies around the ball on defense. That's his MO. He's
and they
that kind
really
of guy.
missed him.
And they missed him. You know, on the offensive side, losing Stribling and you know, losing your quarterback, your starting quarterback in Jacob Bella, those things hurt. And I think you could tell on the offensive side that was major losses on the offensive side. I think, in all honesty, Norsworthy on the defensive side was just as felt. I mean, you've got to have that guy because that guy makes everybody else better. You know what I mean? And what Callaway has done on their defensive side is they're very, very assignment-oriented. These are people who they're locked in on their assignments, and they do very well on that. But you got to have that one guy who can give help. And
they had 4 freshmen starting on defense.
Absolutely, which is almost impossible to overcome. And they still played a heck of a game. And I tip my hat to them. I mean, that's a tough – going on the road with 1 week's preparation and losing those 3 guys – They played their butts off, and I got to give them credit.
Marshall County comes in with a 1-2 record as they were beaten 18-12 by Fort Campbell. Madisonville beat them 42-29, and then they came out and defeated Ballard Memorial 55-24. They're better than the 1-2 record suggests. Madisonville is really, really good.
I'm going to say this right now. I think Madisonville North Hopkins wins the district.
I think they do.
I think they beat Hopkinsville. I think they win the district.
And Marshall gave them all they wanted.
Absolutely. Well, and you can look at Marshall County and, you know, they're led on the ground by Mason Green. Now, anybody who follows high school football in this region knows Mason Green. He's a guy that just gets yards. He just eats up yardage. He had 108 yards rushing against Ballard County on 9 carries. That's a good day. I don't care how you slice it, that's a good day. To the point where they brought in their second-string guy who had 83 yards on 7 carries and 2 touchdowns. Skylar Smith had a good night, 10 of 15, 1 interception, 4 touchdowns, 233 yards passing. As it comes to that, that's what you've got to have if you're Marshall County. A solid performance against Ballard. And this is a team that we know is coached well. You know, I mean, there's no surprises there at all. But you've got to find a way to stop Mason Green, or at least slow him down. If you're the Lakers and you can't slow down Mason Green, it's going to be a long night.
For Callaway to have a good chance in this game, they've got to get those 3 players back.
Right.
And I'm not certain whether they're going to have them back or not. Jacob Bella had a problem with his toe. We'll just have to see. There was some thought that maybe it could be taped up, maybe he could play this week.
Right.
Then the other 2 kids, as I understand it, had problems with concussions.
Which are not often 1-week issues.
Yeah, and now, see, there was a time 20 years ago where it was just like, you okay? Yeah, and you could go play. Now they have a concussion protocol that they go through.
And I'm glad they do.
Until you reach the point in that protocol where the doctors think you're okay, you're not playing.
Yeah, and quite honestly, this is we've talked about the nature of football and where football's going, and one of the things we've discussed quite often is the effect that concussion studies are going to have on football going forward, and I think you're seeing it now. You've got to hold those kids out. You got to. There's no way that you as a fan, a player, a coach, a parent, a fan, you can't call for those kids to play. I mean, and I don't even care. I'm talking about football at the high school level, at the college level, and at the professional level. This is someone's life.
Yeah,
the game is secondary.
I got a concussion playing basketball when I was in 6th grade, and look what happened to me.
Right. So kids, take note. This is why you cannot do that. No, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so much that we don't know about it. Until we do, hold them out.
Yeah. Now, Cody Orr did a good job at running back, filling in last week.
Very
and
athletic.
I think Cody will play well tomorrow. John Foster is capable at quarterback, so we'll just have to see how it turns out. But
a change in the whole offensive plan, though. I mean, when you go from Jacob Bella, who was a run-first quarterback, to John Foster, who's a throw-first quarterback, that's a different team. I mean, you have to relearn the playbook if you're a receiver. You have to. I tell you, the one thing that made me feel good, though, those passes that John Foster made. Now, you can tell he's still working through the game, still understanding the high school game, and you give him credit for that because, he doesn't have a huge amount of starts. But he connected on some passes that, you know what, throw it up high. Let Kevin Robinson go get it. You know what I mean? Let him, because that's what he does.
And
he does.
Kevin Robertson's an outstanding receiver.
Absolutely.
He's a game breaker.
Absolutely.
Moving along, let's talk about Murray High. And this week, Murray High gets Fort Campbell.
Fort Campbell's an interesting team. This is a team that a few years ago was a juggernaut in their division, and well, I think they were 3A. Yeah. So you look at those teams and you kind of go, wow, those guys are really good, and you look at their what they've done since that time, and it's been really bad. I mean, they really fell off.
Well, they beat Marshall 18-12, and you're like, okay, but then they lost to Russellville 20-6, and Glasgow just beat them like your sister's drum, 41-3. So it's difficult to tell exactly what they have.
Right. Well, and here's the thing that you got to look at with Fort Campbell. if they are able to stop the run like they have in 2 of their 3 games, they're going to keep it respectable. That Glasgow game, they gave up Dalvin Smith, who's the quarterback for Glasgow. He had 6 rushes for 134 yards. They had 2 running backs with another 70 yards each against Fort Campbell. They're not going to win games like that. But if you look at their game against Marshall County, they were able to hold Marshall County, their big running back that we were just talking about, to under 100 yards. Only time this season so far he's been under 100 yards. Hold him at 83 yards.
If you look at Fort Campbell's offense, it's kind of startling. 44 of their carries have gone to the same guy this year, Denoris Buchanan. He's averaging about 6 yards per carry. The next highest number of carries is Abdul Howard with just 18. He only has 28 yards. And then you look at their quarterbacks. Howard's the quarterback. He's only completed 6 out of 26 passes. The other quarterback is 0 for 3. And, oh, by the way, Howard has 2 interceptions and no touchdowns.
Well,
so, offensively, they're very one-dimensional.
Right.
And if Murray can find it...
That's not a bad thing, though. I mean, if you look at Madisonville North Hopkins, they're one-dimensional. The difference is, how good are you in that one dimension?
If Murray can contain Buchanan, they can win the football game.
With that game, who runs the ball? If Murray can come out and run the ball and slow down the running attack from Fort Campbell, Murray should win walking away. If, however, Fort Campbell controls the line of scrimmage on the defensive side and can slow down Murray's running game, and then at the same time can figure out a running game of their own, I think Fort Campbell can win it. I mean, this is the point where you're at if you're a Murray High Tiger fan. You've got to go out. You've got the talent. You've got the guys, but you've got to put them in a position to win. You don't have a high percentage passing game. You just don't. Now, is your passing game good? Yeah. If you get the ball to the guys that Murray High has, those guys can do things. Michael Parks is really good. I mean, these are some guys that you can really, really bank on at the high school level. But if you can't get the ball to them, you're stuck running the ball. You've got to figure out what it is in the running game. And if you cannot run the ball and you cannot stop the run, you're going to have a long season if you're a Murray High Tiger. Now, on the other side, if you're able to run the ball and you're able to stop the run, this is a very talented Murray team. They could win some games going through the season. It all comes down to the battle in the trenches and who can come out, play that smash mouth style of football that Murray's ready to play. Who wins in the trenches? Who wins at the point of contact? That's going to be who's winning this game. Murray, Fort Campbell. It's got to be that way.
Coming up on Saturday at 6 o'clock, Murray State plays their second game of the season as they go up against Central Arkansas. It should be an interesting game.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell what either team has. Central Arkansas is a 10-point favorite according to the Massey ratings. But you look at their game against Kansas State, they got beat 52-19, although... That's a misleading
thing.
Although they had 28 first downs, or rather 26 first downs to Kansas State's 18.
Yeah.
And they completed 75% of their passes against Kansas State.
Well, this is a really interesting Central Arkansas team. If you take out the second quarter against Kansas State, they're right in it.
Their quarterback Hayden Hildebrand, very accurate arm.
Yeah, against K-State, 27-35, 198 yards, a touchdown and an interception. That's a good day.
Now he's only averaging 7 yards of completion.
But that's okay.
But consider who they're playing.
Right, exactly. But they're led on the ground by Blackman against K-State. He had 24 carries, 114 yards. That's 4.8 yards per carry. That'll work.
Now, Murray State was explosive in their victory over Kentucky Wesleyan, but even Coach Stewart himself basically discounts that because he was talking about the fact that Central Arkansas would not be able to tell what Murray State had because of who they had played.
Right, and let's be for real here. This is a Murray State team that still has a lot of question marks. You know, what can you do with Schuler Bentley under center? He had a good game last week.
But it's kind of the equivalent of you and me playing basketball against a couple of 90-year-old women.
Yeah, true.
Now, if they were 70, they might beat us.
No, if they were 70, they would beat us. You'd score 30 points, have no assists, and I'd be over here clapping my hands and getting tired on defense. That's what I would do. I know me. I'd set good screens, though, and you can't, you got to have them.
Well, that's kind of like a conversation that I had with Paige Guffey, because there was a video clip that I identified as her sister Amber making a pass to someone for a basket, and Paige told me that it was her, and my response was, when did you ever pass the ball?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, when you're looking at what this Racer team can do, it's all going to come down to the three guys in the backfield. It's going to come down to Bentley, Collins, and Pennick.
And whether the defense can contain Central Arkansas.
Right. Well,
if they can hold Central Arkansas under 30, they've got a chance.
Yeah.
If Central Arkansas scores 50, they don't have a chance.
This is not the same team that we had, last year or 3 years ago or 5 years ago. They don't have the explosiveness on the offensive end to go in a running shootout with somebody. That being said, I like the talent that Bentley and Pennick and Collins bring. I like those guys. I really do. I think there might be something there. You know what I mean? Like, you look at it and you go, okay, all right. But these are guys, in Collins and Pennick, these are guys who are really new to this level. Bentley's had some time at the higher level. I think he brings something better to it. I think there's something there as well, but you just got to be able to perform.
And now, a sentence you probably never thought you would hear from me.
Okay.
I want to talk about soccer.
Thank you, God. I have been trying. Will, I'm not even going to sully it. You go ahead. What do you want to talk about soccer?
The Murray State women's soccer team is off to an incredible start. Head coach Jeremy Groves has done an outstanding job with that program. They had back-to-back undefeated seasons in OVC play. And right now, not only are they undefeated, Harriet Withers, I said Willis, and now I can't get out of my mind. What you talking about, Willis? Harriet Withers, she has 6 of their 9 goals. She is tied for 4th in the nation in goals scored. She's a phenomenal player. You should go watch this team if for no other reason than to see her.
Well, and what really is impressive about this is Withers is a known quantity. Player of the Year last year, ranked by outside scouting services as the best player in the OVC, and I think it's abundantly clear that that's true. What has happened from last year to I think the team might have gotten better.
Yeah.
Which is kind of amazing. It was a good team last year. It was a good team 2 years ago. And now you're watching this team kind of coalesce, and much like any other sport, there's so much that goes into chemistry. Chemistry plays a huge part in success on the soccer field. It just is. I mean, how it works, you got to know where somebody's going to be before they go. It works like that. What's really impressive to me is not that Withers is scoring goals, because I knew that she'd score goals. I knew it. I mean, she's that good. She's going to score goals. Well, she didn't have to. When she walks into a room, she sits down at a booth and has 2 goals. That's just how that works. She wakes up in the morning. If she ties her shoe, she gets a goal. It's just that simple. She scores goals. I eat pizza. She scores goals. That's just how this stuff works. What's really impressive to me is how well the team around her has gelled. A lot of local players, too. A lot of local players. I'm telling you, if there are players from all over the place you got to go see. Just go out there and watch. Take a blanket, go sit on the hill. It's perfect weather for it. Go watch a game. It's fantastic.
A couple of quick notes about the Murray State women's volleyball team. They're off to a 5-1 start. In their last 5 matches, they've won 15 of the 17 sets.
Yep.
And Kristen Besselson, who graduated last year but had a great career at Murray State, she's going to be playing professional volleyball in Europe.
Absolutely. And what's amazing about that is you look at what Coach Schwepker's brought in. He just keeps bringing in the right kind of kids. I mean, they're talented, sure. They're athletic, goes without saying. But they care for one another. They fight for one another. They cheer each other on. They're generally good, positive players. That's how you build a program that gets dominant, is whenever you have players who will, you know what, yeah, they're better than me right now. They're going to play. I'm ready for my time. I'm ready at any given moment. You call my name, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do it. But they're a little bit better. Let's get this win. Coming off of a really great game against SIU where they won, extended their streak to 23 in a row at home, which is just it's unreasonable. That's not right. I mean, we as Murray State fans, I know from in my life, I go to Racer Arena, I expect wins. Now, that's not true when I play pickup ball, because when I go to Racer Arena and play pickup ball, I expect losses and borderline humiliation. But when I go to watch sports and Murray State's on the floor at Racer Arena, I expect W's. I have nothing else to base my belief upon. It's just experience. The basketball team was fantastic there. Now the volleyball team's fantastic there. That's what I do. I go to Racer Arena and I expect a W. So really a great job by Schwepker and the girls, and they are killing it right now. They're doing very, very well. They won the tournament in Chattanooga. Holy cow!
University of Louisville managed to come away with a victory against Purdue. They won by a touchdown. They were predicted to win by 20 points, and would have if they hadn't fumbled inside the 5 twice. But, you know, what are you going to do?
Well, and don't take too much away from Purdue. They played.
I think
really
they're better than anybody thought.
Yeah, much better than anybody thought. Much better than I thought. And especially playing with a backup quarterback in Elijah Sindelar from Caldwell County, who came in, was able to show the same kind of composure and skill that he did in high school. I mean, not a whole lot's changed.
Did you see it on TV?
He can throw touchdowns. I did watch a little bit on TV, yeah.
He looked like a little boy.
Well,
I thought it was.
You know what? So did Doug Flutie, right up until the point where he beat Miami. I mean, that's just how that works.
I was a huge Doug Flutie fan.
Absolutely. Well, and you watch a guy like Sindelar, and you can just see he understands the game.
I was just mainly talking about his face. He's He's so young.
No, he really is.
So.
He is. But and has a really bright future ahead of him. He'll be one of those guys that, you know, the Big Ten needs to watch out for, because he's talented.
And Louisville has a big game against North Carolina this week at North Carolina.
Should be a W for Louisville.
The Massey ratings predict a North Carolina victory. It's a close game.
Yeah, you know.
I think Louisville wins it.
I think they do too. I don't know if it's a blowout or anything like that, but you know,
if you're a Louisville fan, you've just got to hope nobody's looking past North Carolina, because they get Clemson next.
Right, and there's some bad blood there. You know, Louisville wants to beat Clemson, but you got to beat North Carolina first. And North Carolina they bring a high-powered, potent offense. They're talented. They've got guys in the skill positions that are dangerous. If Louisville is asleep at the wheel, North Carolina is a team that can catch them napping. Hopefully that doesn't happen. You know, they can go in there and they can win that game. Kentucky
gets Eastern Kentucky.
Yep.
Enough said.
That should be an easy win for Kentucky. You know, this Kentucky team is really. I watched some of their game against Southern Miss. first game of the season is hard to judge anyway because there's so much that you don't know personnel-wise, and they had so many injuries in that game. I mean, they were down to their third-string center, by the third quarter, which I don't care how good you are, you can't lose offensive linemen like that and not expect some kind of drop-off. But they fought through and they won the game. If everybody's healthy, it should be a cakewalk where your starters play for 2 quarters and then you put in all your subs and let guys play and develop some depth and stuff like that. Eastern Kentucky is not the Eastern Kentucky of old.
Yeah, they're not or at least last year, were not even a good FCS team.
Right.
Much less being the kind of team that could compete with an FBS squad like University of Kentucky.
Right. No, I agree. I agree.
Now, having said that, they did much better against Western in their opener than I expected.
And I think a lot of that's to be expected. I mean, when you look at the history of Western Kentucky versus OVC teams, there's a lot of bad blood and a lot of rivalry there that Western and Murray used to have, and Eastern and Western have had in the past. They did play up, but
one thing that was hard for me to get used to, and I've only recently really gotten used to it, was the animus between Murray and Western Kentucky, because I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Louisville, and I pulled for basically all of those teams. I pulled for Murray State, I pulled for Eastern,
right.
I pulled for Western. I pulled for all of those teams. And so, I can remember watching Western Kentucky beat Kentucky in the NCAA tournament. I think it was 1971, and Cal Luther, the Murray State coach, was quoted the next day in the Courier-Journal as saying, we had 4 teams in the OVC that were better than Kentucky.
Yeah, and he was right. I mean, that year in 71, and I'll get back to that in just a second. That year in 71 was really a high water point for the OVC in a lot of ways. As good as Western was with Jim McDaniels that year, Western lost to Murray State that year.
Right.
I mean, this is a Murray State team with Hector Blondette and Claude Verdon that were...
And Eastern Kentucky they were very good that year as well.
Very good. And in fact, Murray State lost to Eastern Kentucky that year by 1 point. I mean, it was one of those where, at that point, the OVC was...
And I misspoke a little bit. He didn't say that there were 4 teams in the OVC that were better than Kentucky. What he said was that there were 4 teams in the state of Kentucky that were better than UK: Murray State, Western, Eastern, and Louisville. So.
Yep, and you look at that, and I did want to mention Jim McDaniels. For all the animus between Murray State and Western, the passing of Jim McDaniels, the Western Kentucky center, he was a legendary player, scored 2,200 points in his career at Western, one of the top scorers in OVC history. You pass on condolences to his family and to the Western Kentucky family.
And he was a great pro in the ABA.
Yeah, absolutely was. You could argue that there were some problems that cost Western their Final Four, having it be vacated because of improper contact with an agent with Jim McDaniels. But you could never argue that he wasn't a great basketball player. He absolutely was. I mean, some of the stuff we're really not uber fortunate that there just isn't more videotape of the OVC during that year and that era, because there were some fantastic basketball players, and right there amongst the best that have ever played in the OVC, you've got to have Jim McDaniels. So sometime
we need to talk about maybe the best teams from the state or best players from the state in that era. Kentucky State had a great team.
Oh, my gosh.
Travis Grant, who went on to play professionally, along with Elmore Smith. So there were some great teams and players. But for now,
agree. Yeah.
You got anything else?
You know what? No, not at this point. A lot of good sports going on. NFL football kicks off this week. So, for those of you who are NFL football fans, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. It's about as good as it's going to get for you, because your team's probably going to lose, at least half of you. So just get used to that right now.
That brings to a close this edition of the Improbability Engine.